Archangel Chronicles 2, Chapter 20, The Price of Silence, by Raymond Collotti, copyright 2026, all rights reserved.
In marble halls where torches gleam, where vows are bought and gods are named, I learned the cost of speaking truth in a world that feeds on flame. Rome buried daughters in the ground and called the darkness law. But one small breath escaped the grave and taught my heart to fall. I counted ships, I weighed the gold, I learned what men would trade, but love was never meant for accounts, nor truth that fades. So take my name, take my breath, let the river close my eyes. If silence keeps my daughter free from Rome's unending lies, let history forget my face, let empires pass me by. If Sophia walks the world in light, then this is how I die.
Sophia. That night, we camped within a day's walk from Alexandria. The camp felt emptier than after Mara and the Therapeutae departed. Not quieter, as there were still voices, the crackle of fire, the clink of cups, but thinner, as though something luminous had passed through and left the air unchanged. The sun was down below low hills, and the stars were beginning to show themselves one by one, shy but persistent. Joseph and Mary bade us good night and retired with the child of light. The rest of us gathered for supper near the central fire. Adam and I, Loukia and her mother Kaliope, and Targitus, who sat cross-legged on the ground with his back to the saddle, his face lit unevenly by flame. Loukia broke bread and passed it first to her mother, then to Adam. Kaliope smiled faintly, her eyes brighter than they had been days before. She said nothing, but her silence was no longer broken, only deep. For a time, we ate without speaking. At last, Adam leaned forward, elbows on his knees, gaze fixed on Targitus. "You vanished at Mamshit," he said quietly, and then reappeared like an answer to a prayer. "You never told us what happened in between." Targitus chuckled softly, tearing bread. "You never asked at the right time." I raised an eyebrow. "I am asking now." He looked at me, then at Adam, and then around the fire at Loukia and Kaliope, as if measuring whether the night itself was ready. "Well," he said at last, "if you insist." Adam smiled. "We insist." Targitus leaned back, his eyes lifting briefly to the dark above us. "The truth," he said, "is that I never truly left you." Adam frowned. "You were 2 days behind us." "In body," Targitus agreed, "not in sight." The fire popped, sparks spiraled upwards. "My story," Targitus said, "begins not with my feet, but with her wings." He raised 2 fingers and whistled softly. From the darkness above there came the faintest rush of wings. "Zephyria," he said, smiling. My better eyes. Zephyria swooped down from the darkness and landed on her perch, the T-shaped stick that stood outside our circle, where she folded her wings and looked at us through her fierce eyes. Targitus. I was watching the caravan leave Mamshit when she first discovered me and what I could not see on my own. Through her eyes, the desert stretched wide and merciless, every ridge and wadi etched with painful clarity, and there, far behind you, were three figures moving badly, unevenly, like people already past their strength. They were trying to follow you. They will die, I told her. She cried once, sharp and insistent, and turned south. I followed. When I reached them, they were nearly finished, water gone, food spent, hope threadbare. They were wrapped in desert robes, faces hidden, moving from stubbornness more than sense. I dismounted and brought them water. The woman collapsed first, and in her fall, the veil of her face fell away. I laughed aloud. By all the gods that ever pretended to be asleep, I said, Camilla. He paused there, grinning at the firelight. Adam sat up straighter. Camilla? Yes, Targitus said cheerfully, very much alive, furious, feverish, and cursing in Latin so precise it could have been engraved. Loukia gasped softly. And the others? Sophia asked. Targitus waved a hand. Ah, I'm coming to them. He took another piece of bread, unhurried. With her, he continued, was Scarus, older, leaner, and still impossible to kill, and behind him, looming like a walking tavern, was a Greek merchant so large I thought the desert had learned to grow bears. Adam laughed despite himself. Theron, the one and only, Targitus said, complaining bitterly about sand, thirst, Rome, and fate in that order. Kaliope's eyes crinkled with silent amusement. But Camilla, Targitus went on, his tone softening, was in a bad way. The journey had broken her strength. Fever burned her thin as a wick. He stared into the fire for a moment. So I turned back to Mamshit with them, and I stayed. Days passed, and more days. Camilla lived and recovered. That mattered. Sophia leaned forward. And us? Targitus smiled faintly. Ah, you. He lifted his eyes again, and for a heartbeat, the firelight reflected something vast and distant in them. Through Zephyria, he said, I watched you. Adam's smile faded into wonder. I saw you enter Jerusalem, Targitus continued. I saw the palace, the king. I saw you leave again under the weight of foreboding and stars. The night seemed to lean closer. I followed you to Bethlehem, he said. I saw the cave, the child, the light of the world. Adam nodded, understanding. I was there, Targitus said quietly, when the gifts were laid down, when you gave the eagle's feather to the child's mother. Adam looked at Sophia, shaken. And when Mary and Joseph fled, Targitus went on. Zephyria followed them, and when the town woke the next morning, his voice darkened. I saw the slaughter. The fire crackled loudly as if in protest. Loukia bowed her head. Kaliope reached for her hand. And after that, Targitus said, everything broke into motion. He glanced at Adam and Sophia, his eyes bright with story. But before I tell you how we rescued Balthazar and Melchior and you, Sophia cut in, unable to hold back any longer. Targitus, she said sharply, what of Camilla, of Scarus and Theron? You keep passing over them. Yes, Adam nodded, every time. Targitus smiled, slow, broad, infuriating. Because, he said, their story is not mine to tell. Adam stared. What do you mean? Sophia turned. Targitus. He tilted his head slightly. Ask them yourselves, he said. Both of us turned at once. Behind us, just beyond the ring of firelight, 3 figures stood, dust-stained, travel-worn, but smiling. Camilla bowed her head. Scarus crossed his arms. Theron spread his hands wide. Did we miss supper? Theron asked. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the night erupted with laughter, cries, and joys, and the story, at last, passed into other hands. Theron. Since Targitus has robbed me of the pleasure of a dramatic entrance, I suppose I must settle for the truth. First, yes, we are alive, which, given the road behind us, still surprises me. Second, no, we did not mean to sneak up on you. Scarus insists we did. Camilla insists she heard you long before we reached the fire. I insist that after weeks of desert, no one learns to walk quietly or out of respect for one's exhaustion. Theron spread his hands toward the fire, palms out, warming them as if they were his most natural thing in the world. Now, where to begin? Ah, yes, Mamshit. When we first stumbled into Mamshit, it was not heroism that brought us there. It was stubbornness and poor planning, dressed up afterwards as resolve. Camilla was burning with fever by then. She had been strong for too long, and the desert, like Rome, punishes those who endure quietly. Scarus carried her more than once. I complained loudly to disguise the fact that I was frightened. You always complain when you're frightened, Camilla murmured once. Of course, I told her. Silence is much worse. We found shelter near the cistern. Targitus had sense enough to keep us hidden, and enough mercy to stay where he might have gone on. For that alone, I owe him more than I will ever say aloud. Camilla slept, or drifted, or fought. Fevers do not respect vocabulary. And when she lay between worlds, Scarus and I took turns keeping watch. He said little. I filled the silence generously. She'll live, I told him. Women like her always do. Exactly, said Scarus. When Camilla finally woke clear-eyed, the first thing she asked was, Where are they? Not, how long have I been gone, or what did we risk, or even who is chasing us now, just, where are they? You trained her too well, I told Scarus. She'd be training them herself, he replied. We stayed longer than he should have. Mamshit is a place that tempts you to linger, quiet, half forgotten, not yet ruined by importance. But Camilla knew what the rest of us tried not to admit. We were not meant to remain behind. That was when Targitus sent his eagle, and he saw things that no Greek merchant would ever see. He paused, glancing around the fire, meeting Adam's eyes and then Sophia's. He saw Jerusalem through borrowed sight. He saw the palace, the king who rotted from inside. He saw your faces when you left him, older than when you arrived. He saw Bethlehem. He saw the cave and, he hesitated, then spoke carefully. He saw the child, not as a story, not as a symbol, but as a presence. Theron swallowed, then gave a small, rueful smile. I have traded in miracles all my life. Gems, spices, rumors, prophecy, people will pay for anything that glitters. This did not glitter. It rested. That was when I understood we are already too late to turn back. When the town awoke screaming the next morning, he did not see it all. No one should, but he saw enough. He saw you flee. He saw the roads fracture. He saw the pursuit organized, relentless, and stupid enough to believe violence could still fix things. And then I saw why Targitus never worries. He gestured towards the Scythian warriors beyond the firelight, barely visible now. The desert answered violence with speed. Balthazar first, Melchior next, you last. Every time Herod's men thought they were closing the net, it broke, not because you were clever, because you were not alone. Theron leaned back, exhaling. And then Brigomaris. That part I did not expect. Targitus watched him wander into the desert like a man already dead. He watched someone or something follow him that was not hunger or thirst or guilt. And then something else arrived. Theron glanced as if expecting wings. I have no language for angels, only what men do afterward. And afterward, Brigomaris chose differently. He looked back at Adam and Sophia now, eyes sharp. Which brings us to why we are here now. Not coincidence, not rescue, not reunion, but choice. Camilla rose then, stepping into the firelight, and Theron fell silent, not because he was finished, but because the story had reached the point where it no longer belonged to him alone. I will tell the rest, she said calmly. Theron inclined his head, as promised. The fire burned lower, and the night leaned in, listening. Our trading fleet from India passed up the Erythraean Sea without incident. With favorable winds at our backs, we traveled up the coast of Ethiopia, stopping from time to time to take in provisions, fresh water, and ivory. At last, they came to the port city of Berenice in Egypt and offloaded our ships. Honourius issued orders and sent dispatches by swift relays of horsemen across the desert to Coptos on the Nile, and thence by ship down the Nile to Alexandria, to the prefect there, Turranius. Theron assembled caravans of camels, ox carts, and mules to cross the desert with the enormous wealth of silks, spices, ivory, frankincense, and myrrh gained from India and Aksum. Where the caravans made their way to Coptos on the Nile, where much was traded at the emporium there, but the bulk was loaded into another great fleet of riverboats and barges to make the final trip to Alexandria. Our traders' flotilla now made its way up to the Nile, which is where we were greeted with great fanfare and excitement. The Nile convoy arrived at dusk. From the balconies of the former Ptolemaic palace, Honourius watched the river traffic ease into its berths, broad-bellied grain ships, spice-laden dhows from Masurus, lacquered chests sealed with eastern sigils, ivory tusks stacked like pale spears. The air was thick with incense and river mud and victory. Alexandria celebrated as it always did, loudly, greedily, magnificently. Gaius Turranius had spared no expense. The banquet spilled across 3 halls. Great musicians played beside Nubian drummers. Dancers moved like flame. Wine flowed unchecked. Honourius laughed, toasted, accepted praise with practice ease. To the world, he was what he had always been, a servant of Rome, a master of trade, a man favored by fortune. And Turranius never left his side. He was gracious, attentive, warm. My dear Honourius, the prefect said, clapping him on the shoulder, you bring the East to our doorstep. Augustus himself will sleep easier knowing that these routes are secure. I serve the emperor, Honourius replied, lifting his cup. And Egypt serves you, Turranius smiled, too easily, when the revels finally thinned and the guests staggered away into the torchlit corridors. Turranius gestured toward a private chamber deep within the palace. One last cup, he said. Old friends should not part the night as strangers. Honourius hesitated, only a breath, and then nodded. The chamber was small, windowed, spare. A brazier burned low. No servants, no guests. Turranius closed the door himself. The sound was final. He poured wine slowly, then handed a cup to Honourius. They drank in silence. At length, Turranius said lightly, "Do you know what Romans fear more than rebellion?" Honourius glanced at him. "Courageous enemies," he said. Turranius chuckled. "No, survival." He set his cup down. "You have lived a careful life, Honourius. Admirably so. Discreet friendships, well-placed benefactors, loyal service." Honourius' expression did not change. "You flatter me." "I accuse you," Turranius said pleasantly. The word landed without force, but with precision. Honourius straightened slightly. "Of what, exactly?" Turranius turned, resting his hip against the table. "Treachery." There was a long pause. Honourius smiled, calm and cold. "That is a serious charge to make in private." "Yes," Turranius agreed, "which is why I do so." He walked to the brazier and stirred the coals. "Tell me," he said conversationally, "do you remember a Vestal virgin named Tullia?" The room seemed to contract. Honourius did not answer at once. "I remember," he said finally, "that Rome devours its daughters when it grows afraid." Turranius watched him closely. "Ah, so you do remember her." "She was condemned," Honourius said evenly, "by the college, by custom, by law." "And yet," Turranius replied, "laws do not make women pregnant." A chilled silence filled the room. "You were seen with her," Turranius continued, "more than once, always discreetly, always just enough to be deniable." Honourius's jaw tightened. "You tread dangerous ground, Prefect." "I was not finished," Turranius said mildly. "She was buried alive," he went on, "as tradition demands. A tragedy, an inconvenience. Rome moved on." He turned his eyes sharp now. "Except she did not die." Honourius's cup slipped slightly in his hand. Turranius smiled. "There are rumors," he said, "whispers. A midwife who vanished, a boat hired under false papers, an island villa funded through 3 layers of bankers who all trace, eventually, back to you." Honourius's voice was low. "Rumors are not evidence." "No," Turranius agreed, "but patterns are." He stepped closer. "And then there is the child." Honourius looked up sharply. "What child?" Turranius's eyes glittered. "Ah, so you do not deny the possibility." "You accuse me of seducing a Vestal," Honourius said, rising to his full height. "A crime punishable by death. You do this without proof, in a room without witnesses." Turranius inclined his head. "Because I am not finished deducing." He circled Honourius slowly, like a man admiring a statue he intends to crack. A child smuggled east, raised far from Rome, guarded by a woman who took vows of silence and secrecy, a girl of extraordinary intellect, untouchable, unmarried, dangerous. Honourius's breath was controlled but shallow. You have no right. I have every right, Turranius snapped suddenly, the genial mask gone. I am prefect of Egypt. This province feeds Rome, and you have hidden a living scandal, one that could unravel the sanctity of the Vestals, the authority of the princeps, the legitimacy of all that gods that Rome pretends to honor. Well, you have committed treason of the most exquisite kind. The word treason hung between them like a blade. At last Honourius spoke. You are a clever man, Turranius. The prefect smiled again. I survived by it. And what do you want? Honourius asked quietly. Turranius considered him. For now, he said, nothing. He picked up his cup and drank. But understand this. I know you loved her, and I know she lived, and I suspect the child lives still. He leaned in close. And I am patient. He stepped back and opened the door. Sleep well, my friend, Turranius said warmly. Alexandria is full of secrets. Some rise like the Nile. Others drown. The door closed. Honourius stood alone, the echoes of celebration distant now, his carefully ordered life suddenly balanced over a pit of ancient fire, and far away, unknown to either man, the child Rome had tried to bury was already writing things that would change the world. When the door closed, Gaius Turranius did not move. For a long moment he stood where Honourius had left him, listening to the faint echo of music drifting up from the lower courts, the laughter, the clatter of cups, the oblivious joy of men who believed the night still belonged to them. He exhaled slowly, and only then did he smile, not with pleasure, but with assessment. So, he murmured to himself, you still bleed. He walked down the hall to where there was a window that overlooked Alexandria. Torches flickered along the canopic way like fallen stars. Ships rode at anchor in the great harbor, their lanterns rocking gently on the black water. The fire at the top of the great lighthouse Pharos flickered, casting a fiery glow over the water. Somewhere beyond the city, the Nile continued its patient work, indifferent to emperors and prefects alike. Turranius rested his hands on the stone sill. Honourius had not denied it. That was the thing. An innocent man rages. A guilty one bargains. Honourius had done neither. He had measured, and that was far more dangerous. Love, Turranius said softly, always the weak seem. He turned his back to the window and began to pace. He had suspected the story for years, not the details, but the shape of it. Rome did not produce women like Tullia by accident, nor minds like Sophia's. Such precision required careful concealment, wealth, influence, and fear. And Honourius possessed all three. Turranius went to his apartments and poured himself fresh wine, though he barely drank it. The Vestal, he thought, buried alive. Rome told itself that the rite preserved purity. In truth, it preserved authority. Fear dressed as holiness. The gods, conveniently silent, but gods were rarely silent when children survived their graves. If the girl lives, Turranius said quietly to himself, then Rome's most sacred lie breathes. He felt not anger, not fear, not guilt, but anticipation. A living secret was far more valuable than a dead one. He crossed to a cabinet and unlocked it. Inside lay a narrow stack of tablets and letters, sealed with marks only he could read. He removed one and broke the wax. It contained a single name, Sophia. He traced the letters with his finger. "She does not know," he murmured, "which makes her more dangerous and more useful." There was no hatred in his thoughts toward her, only strategy. A brilliant woman raised beyond Rome's reach, beloved by Greeks, trusted by Jews, consulted by governors, a bridge, and bridges were always things seized in war. What a glittering possibility this was. And Honourius would burn the world before he let her fall, Turranius thought. That too was leverage. He returned the tablet to the cabinet and locked it carefully. Patience, he told himself. One does not crush a man like Honourius. One waits for a misstep, a letter, a name spoken too freely, a child appearing where none should. Turranius moved back to the brazier and stirred the coals again, watching the sparks rise and vanish. Rome believes it buries its sins, he whispers, but Egypt remembers. Outside, a night wind swept through the palace corridors. Turranius smiled, thin, precise, patient. "Let us see," he whispered, "which of you survives the truth." Honourius remained alone and took stock, making the long private reckoning of a man who has lived for decades inside a carefully sealed secret. The corridors of the palace seemed longer on the way out. Honourius walked without escort, his sandals whispering against the marble, the echoes of laughter and music receding behind him like a dream. Servants bowed as he passed. He acknowledged them out of habit, not attention. Only when he reached his chamber did he allow his shoulders to sag. He closed the door, bolted it, then leaned his forehead against the cool wood. He raised his head and spoke to the fates. "So," he whispered, "you remember." He crossed the room slowly, as though the air had thickened. A single lamp burned on the writing table, its flame steady, almost reproachful. He sat before it and stared at his hands that had signed contracts, treaties, counted coins, and shaped empires of trade, hands that had once held a young woman's face in the half-light of a Roman garden. Tullia. He closed his eyes. She had been barely more than a girl, sworn to a vow she did not understand, trained to serve a purity that demanded her silence. She had listened when he spoke to her, not as a magistrate or patron, but as a man who saw and desired her. That had been his first crime. The second had been believing that such love could exist untouched by power. The third, he exhaled sharply, had been failing to stop what came after. She should have died, he murmured. That was the law. That was Rome. But Rome had not known everything. He rose and went to the chest at the foot of his bed. It was plain, unadorned, locked with a simple iron key. He hesitated only a moment before opening it. Inside lay things that had no place in a senator's chamber: a faded ribbon, a child's carving of a bird, a small parchment wrapped in oilcloth. He unwrapped it carefully. A single line, written in careful, unfamiliar hand. Light does not accuse, it reveals. His breath caught. She writes like you, he said aloud, though no one was there to hear it. Or perhaps you taught her. He sat on the bed, parchment trembling in his fingers. His mind went back to the stormy night when he first laid eyes upon the baby girl. Coin routed through shadows, ships hired without names, a woman sworn to silence, paid to vanish, hope disguised as logistics. And now, Turranius had seen the pattern. Too clever by half, Honourius muttered. Always my failing. He pressed his palms to his eyes, feeling the ache behind them. What would Turranius do? He wouldn't expose him, at least not yet. Exposure destroyed leverage. Turranius would wait, gather threads, pull gently until something tore, and when it did, Rome would not ask whether Honourius had loved. It would ask whether he had lied, and the answer was yes. He rose again, restless, pacing the room. If they find her, he said softly, they will not forgive her brilliance. Rome tolerated women who were silent. It endured women who were useful. It destroyed women who were seen. He stopped by the window and looked out over the harbor, its lights wavering in the dark. You must not come back, he whispered. Not yet. His jaw tightened. He had lived his life in service to systems that demanded sacrifice from others. He had believed himself clever enough to navigate their cruelties without becoming them. Turranius's accusation had shattered that illusion. You buried the truth, Honourius said to his reflection in the glass, and now it has learned to breathe. He strengthened then, not in pride, but in decision. If Turranius moved, Honourius would not defend himself. He would burn everything else. He returned to the table and pulled fresh parchment toward him. There were letters to be written, names to be warned, agents to be summoned, accounts to be shifted, routes to be closed, old networks, long dormant, stirred again. Honourius dipped his pen. He hesitated, the stylus poised over the parchment. For you, he murmured, thinking of his daughter as child, for what I could not undo. Outside, the city slept. Inside, the reckoning had begun. The summons went out without seal or ceremony. Theron arrived first, as he always did, unannounced by servants already smiling as though the palace belonged to him. He wore his long merchant's robe, cut slightly too well, gold rings on all fingers, and the air of a man who knew how to make emperors laugh and creditors wait. Scarus came moments later. He closed the door behind him and stood where he was told. Back straight, hands folded behind him. The lamplight caught the old scars on his forearms, souvenirs of loyalty rendered without applause. Honourius regarded them both in silence. You sent for us, Theron said lightly, which means either you are about to make me rich or about to ruin me. Possibly both, Honourius replied. He gestured for Theron to sit, then nodded once to Scarus. Stay. Scarus did not move. Honourius crossed to the table and placed a rolled parchment upon it, not sealed, not marked. I need you to find someone, he said. Theron raised an eyebrow. Alexandria is full of someones. Not here, Honourius said. Already gone, traveling under no single banner, known to you by an inconvenient name. Theron's smile thinned. Go on. The Star Walkers, Honourius said. Scarus shifted almost imperceptibly. Theron leaned back. He shook his head slowly. "Those mystics," he said. "Always bad for bookkeeping." "They are moving south," Honourius continued, "and east, and sometimes west. We all know they were headed to a small town in Judea named Bethlehem. They may have left that place by now." Honourius's gaze sharpened. "Scarus knows this, Theron, but you do not. Sophia is my daughter. She is in great danger." The name settled into the room. Theron stopped smiling. "So, this is not a casual errand." "It is not," Honourius agreed. "You are to find her, and Adam, sometimes called anyone. You are to deliver this into her hands." He tapped the parchment. Theron did not reach for it. "What happens after?" "You will know what to do." Scarus spoke for the first time. "If others be hunting him, they are," Honourius said. Theron let out a slow breath. "Then you are sending us into another man's net." "I am sending you," Honourius said quietly, "because you know how to step through nets without tearing them." Theron studied him. "You are afraid." Honourius did not deny it. "I am cautious," he said instead, "and I trust very few people with my caution. I trust the two of you." Scarus bowed his head slightly. Theron glanced between them and then sighed. "You always choose the most expensive option." "You are well paid," Honourius replied. Theron smiled faintly. "In coin, yes. In longevity, well, less so." Honourius stepped closer. He lowered his voice. "This message is not to be intercepted, not by Rome, not by Alexandria, not by friends pretending to be either." Theron's expression hardened. "Delivering this will mark us." "Yes," Honourius said, "which is why Scarus goes with you." Scarus straightened. "I will guard the message," he said simply. Theron nodded. "And if we find them too late?" Honourius's jaw tightened. "Then you will tell me," he said, "and we will adapt." Theron reached out at last and took the parchment, weighing it in his hand as if it were a blade. "You know," he said softly, "that once words like these are loosed, they cannot be called back." "I know," Honourius replied. "That is why I am not sending it through ordinary channels." Scarus stepped closer to the table. "What is written?" Honourius shook his head. "Enough to warn, not enough to endanger." Theron smiled without humor. "You always did understand restraint too late," Honourius met his gaze. "That is why I need you now," he said. A long silence followed. Then Theron tucked the parchment into the inner fold of his robe. "We leave at dawn," he said, "via the canal road first. After that, rumors, caravans, and the smell of trouble." He paused at the door. "If I find her, what should we say?" Honourius answered without hesitation. "Tell her," he said, "that the truth she walks with has been noticed, and that someone who once failed to speak now chooses silence carefully." Theron nodded. Scarus opened the door. As they left, Honourius remained by the table, one hand resting where the parchment had been. "Go carefully," he said to them, or to the world. He did not know. The door closed. The invitation bore Honourius's seal. That alone unsettled Turranius. He arrived at dusk, impeccably dressed, his expression genial, his eyes already calculating. The chamber was smaller than the banquet hall, windowed on the harbor, the lamps shaded low. No scribes, no guards within earshot. Honourius stood when Turranius entered. "Prefect," he said, nodding his head, "thank you for coming." "Of course," Turranius replied, smiling as if this were an overdue courtesy between friends. "I find our conversations clarifying." They sat opposite one another on a narrow table. A single tray of wine stood between them, untouched. Honourius did not waste time. "I will speak plainly," he said. "What you suspect is dangerous to me, to you, to Rome." Turranius raised an eyebrow. "Danger never frightened me, only lack of gold or power." Honourius nodded once. "Then let us discuss value." He reached beneath the table and produced a leather folio. Inside were tablets, figures, routes, seals. He turned one, then another, letting the numbers speak before he did. "The Indian trade alone," Honourius said quietly, "will triple this year. Paper, nard, silk, gemstones. Africa adds ivory, gold, grain. The roots are secure, the profits unprecedented." Turranius leaned forward despite himself. "I offer you," Honourius continued, "half." The word felt like a dropped coin. "Half?" Turranius repeated. "Half the net worth generated by the Indian and African trade under my administration," Honourius said. "Not a tithe, not a favor, a division." Turranius stared at the tablets, his breath slow, controlled. The sum was obscene. Kingdoms could be bought with less. "And in return," he asked softly, though he already knew. "Your silence," Honourius said, "permanent, complete. You will never speak of the Vestal or of the child, of any suspicion you have entertained." Turranius sat back, eyes half-lidded. "You would buy oblivion," he murmured. "I would purchase peace," Honourius replied, "for everyone." A long pause followed. The harbor lights flickered beyond the window. Turranius's fingers drummed once on the table and then stilled. "Do you know," he said slowly, "what tempts me most about this offer?" "I imagine it is the sum," Honourius said. "No," Turranius smiled. "It is the admission." Honourius did not respond. Turranius lifted his cup at last, sniffed the wine, and set it down again. "Half the wealth of 2 continents," he said, "in exchange for forgetting a single woman and a single child." He laughed quietly. "We Romans do love efficiency." Honourius's voice hardened. "Is it enough?" Turranius' smile thinned. "Almost." The word hung in the air. "Almost?" Honourius echoed. "Yes," Turranius said pleasantly, "because wealth is easily counted. Silence is not. Silence requires, assurance." He leaned forward now, his eyes bright and predatory. "There is one additional condition." Honourius frowned. "Name it." Turranius did not answer at once. He stood and crossed to the window, gazing out at the harbor as if admiring the view. "I have watched her," he said casually, "from a distance, listened to reports. A woman of remarkable intellect, unusual poise, dangerous independence." Honourius's heart began to pound. "She walks among scholars as in equal," Turranius continued. "Men defer to her. That alone is, provocative." He turned back, smiling. "Sophia." The name cut the air like a knife. Honourius rose to his feet. You will not speak her name. Oh, I must, Turranius said lightly, because she is the final guarantee. He returned to the table and placed both hands upon it. For my silence, he said, enunciating each word, I require her hand. The silence filled the room with tension. You know who she is, Turranius went on, his voice smooth. You know what she means to you, which makes her perfect. Honourius's voice was low, shaking with controlled fury. You ask me to sell my daughter? I ask you to protect her, Turranius corrected. As my wife, she would be beyond suspicion, beyond inquiry, beyond danger. She would be an asset for me, a beautiful jewel in my crown. You would take her freedom, Honourius said. Turranius shrugged. Freedom is a luxury. I need security. Honourius stepped closer, his hands clutched at his side. She would never agree. Turranius smiled. Daughters often misunderstand what is best for them. The air grew taut and brittle. At last, Turranius said softly, the bargain is complete. Half the wealth of empires and the woman who embodies the secret. He straightened, adjusting his cloak. Consider it carefully, my friend. I'm a patient man, but patience, like an appetite, must be fed. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, he added. If you refuse, I will assume you prefer the truth to be opened up like Pandora's box. The door closed behind him. Honourius stood, the harbor lights blurring before his eyes. Gold he could surrender, power he could relinquish, but this? No, he whispered into the lamplit room, not her. And at that moment, he understood with terrible clarity that the price of silence had never been wealth at all. It had always been love. Several days passed. Alexandria had never seen a departure so splendid. Trumpets sounded from the quay as the former royal barge, once possessed by Ptolemaic pharaohs, now Roman by appropriation, pushed away from the harbor amid cheers. Its painted prow gleamed with gold leaf. Silver, silken awnings billowed above decks strewn with cushions and bronze lamps. Musicians played flutes and lyres. Incense burned. Wine flowed. Honourius stood at the rail, dressed in ceremonial armor, serene, magnanimous, every inch the great patron of trade and empire. Behind him stood Gaius Turranius, prefect of Egypt, resplendent in white linen, edged with purple, beaming as the crowd roared its approval. To Coptos, Turranius proclaimed, lifting his cup, to commerce, concord, and the promise of new alliances. The crowd answered him with acclaim. Honourius raised his own cup. To the Nile, he said, which carries all truth in time. Turranius laughed. As the barge slipped into the broad, sunlit reach of the river, the city receded behind them. Palm-lined banks replaced marble. The water darkened to green gold, flecked with light. Servants circulated endlessly. Platters of roasted fowl, figs, honeyed bread, amphorae uncorked and refilled. Musicians struck a livelier tune. Turranius drank deeply. You see, he said, clapping Honourius on his shoulder, we are men of understanding, you and I. Rome prospers when reason prevails. Honourius smiled thinly. Reason, and a hard bargain. And Sophia, Turranius added, his eyes glittering. Returning from India, you said. Yes, Honourius replied smoothly. She will meet us at Koptos. She has lingered too long among the merchants and monks. It is time she returned to Roman protection. Turranius' smile sharpened. And she accepts. Honourius did not hesitate. She will be obedient. Turranius lifted his cup again. Then I drink to my future bride. Honourius poured the wine himself. The barge moved with deceptive grace. For what Turranius did not see, what no one on the upper deck could see, was the slow bloom of water below. The royal barge was old. Its timbers had been refitted many times, patched, painted, blessed by priests and accountants alike. But age leaves memories in wood, and wood, long submerged and resurfaced, remembers weakness. And Honourius knew his ships. He had inspected the vessel and knew its vulnerabilities. He had made arrangements to ensure that the vessel's weaknesses were exploited by a few well-placed alterations, a support removed here, a thinning of the keel there. He was a patient man, a determined man. He awaited the inevitable. In due course, the inevitable came. A dull crack sounded below the waterline. Then another. The servant paused, frowning, as a trickle ran along the planks near the storage hold. He bent, touched it, and felt the unmistakable cold. "Prefect," he began, but laughter drowned him out. The day progressed as the barge, and the festivities continued as the vessel rode up the calm waters of the Nile. The sun dipped lower, lamps were lit, the wine grew heavier. Turranius's words blurred pleasantly, his gestures grander, his caution dulled. "You are a good father," he said thickly. "Too good. That is your weakness." Honourius regarded him quietly. Perhaps. The barge shuddered. It was subtle at first. Just a tremor beneath the feet, like a muscle twitch. The musicians faltered. A goblet tipped and spilled red across the deck. "What was that?" Turranius asked, laughing. Then came a sound that silenced even the river birds, a long, splittering groan. The deck pitched. Servants cried out. One was thrown against a pillar. Another dropped a tray that shattered in a spray of bronze and glass. Water surged up through the seams between the planks. Turranius staggered. "What is this?" Honourius smiled at him, raising his cup. "The Nile," he said calmly, "taking its due." He took a long draught from his cup, and then threw it overboard. "Are you ready for that, my friend?" he said, turning to Turranius. The barge lurched again, harder this time. A section of railing tore free. A mast groaned and cracked. Below, the hull gave way with a thunderous report, and water poured in, unstoppable. "Guards!" Turranius shouted. "Get me!" But the guards were scrambling, slipping, shouting orders that no one could hear. The music had stopped. The party descended into chaos. Turranius turned on Honourius, terror cutting through the wine. A look of horror and fear twisted his face. "You!" he gasped. "You!" Honourius met his gaze, his face pale but resolved. "I promised you Sophia," he said, "and I promised you silence. I never forget my promises. I will have your silence, but the Nile will keep you from Sophia." The deck buckled beneath them. "And you will learn, my friend," Honourius said quietly, "that there is no price to possess a soul. Water surged over their sandals. Turranius's bravado shattered. "You cannot kill a prefect," he screamed. "Rome will—" Honourius leaned close, his voice almost lost in the roar of water and splintering wood. "Rome buries what embarrasses it," he said, "and it always has." The barge tilted violently. Men were thrown into the river. Lamps toppled, hissing out as water claimed them. The Nile surged aboard like an animal loosed. Turranius slipped, clawing at Honourius's arm. "Help me," he shrieked. "You owe me." Honourius grasped his wrist, yanking it down and around his back. He wrapped his arms around Turranius in a bear hug. Their faces were touching. Turranius screamed, "Shut up, you fool, or enter Hades as a coward," shouted Honourius. "What?" hissed Turranius. Then a look of surprise crossed his face. You set this all up. Let me go. Let me go." Honourius laughed. "Take heart, my treacherous friend. I shall die a hero, my secret with me, and you shall be swallowed up by the Nile, forgotten forever." Honourius tightened his grip. He was dressed in his ceremonial armor, and his scarlet cloak was half in the water, drenched and weighing both of them down. For a single heartbeat, they teetered at the edge of the water, which was rapidly swallowing the barge and all on it. All color drained from Turranius's face, and he whimpered like a baby. Then Honourius leapt, taking them both into the water. Ensnared by Honourius's deadly embrace, they vanished beneath the churning water. Turranius's screams cut short. One last thought passed through Honourius's mind as he descended into the cool waters. "Forgive me." The barge broke apart, its finery sinking into the river's indifferent depths. The Nile did not answer. It never does. 2 days passed. Theron, Scarus, and I were making ready to depart on our quest to find you. The rumor reached the docks before the messengers did. Theron heard it first, standing beneath the awning of a spice warehouse near the Canopic Way, arguing half-heartedly with a customs clerk over weights that neither of them believed. The clerk faltered in mid-sentence, his eyes flicking past Theron towards the river. "They say," the man muttered, lowering his voice, "the royal barge never reached Koptos." Theron stilled. "That's not unusual," he said lightly. "The Nile rearranges schedules." The clerk shook his head. "Not delayed. Gone." Theron felt the world tilt. He turned slowly. "Gone? How?" "Collapsed," the man said, "mid-river. Timber split like old bone. The prefect's party, gods helped them. Most were taken by the river." Theron smiled faintly, the expression he wore when numbers stopped adding up. "And the prefect?" The clerk hesitated. "No body." Theron thanked him, pressed a coin into his palm, and walked away without another word. He did not hurry. Men who hurried made mistakes. Scarus heard it from a soldier. The man found him near the western gate, where Scarus had been overseeing the loading of a caravan bound south. The soldier was pale, his armor still damp with river spray. "They pulled survivors from the water," the man said. "Not many." Scarus's jaw tightened. "Honourius?" "Missing." Scarus exhaled once. "And the prefect?" The soldier shook his head. Scarus closed his eyes briefly. So, this was Honourius' solution. They found each other by instinct, not arrangement. Theron emerging from a side street, Scarus stepping out from a shadow near the old Therapeutae steps. No greetings, no pleasantries. Theron spoke first. The river ate him. Scarus nodded. The river was fed. Theron studied the older man's face. You knew. Scarus did not answer at once. When he did, his voice was low. I suspected so. Theron let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Then Honourius has crossed the last line. He be crossing that there line crossed by the prefect, Scarus said. Everything after that be his calculating. They stood in silence, listening to the city, vendors shouting, carts rattling, life continuing with obscene indifference. Theron broke it. This changes everything. Aye, Scarus said. Double for the people we are supposing to be fined. Theron's gaze sharpened. Sophia. And Adam, Scarus said, and others. Theron rubbed his temple. If Turranius is dead, Rome will look for a reason. Accidents make officials nervous. Vacuums make them violent. Scarus turned toward the river, where the water moved as it always had. He bought time. Theron followed his gaze. Time is expensive. Theron spoke carefully now. Did he tell you? No, Scarus replied. He not betrusted me with the details, only the direction. Theron nodded slowly. Then this was deliberate, which means the message we carried just became heavier. Scarus looked at him. We must be reaching him before Rome decides who be inheriting the prefect's fear. They stood together, two men who had survived long enough to recognize the turning point when it arrived. Theron adjusted his cloak. We leave tonight. They started down the street, blending into the crowd. Behind them, the Nile flowed, silent, inscrutable, carrying with it the last breath of a man who had mistaken greed for immunity. And far beyond Alexandria, you, the Starwalkers, continued on your path, unaware that the river had just changed the weight of the world around you. We left while the city still pretended to sleep. The streets near the Canopic Way were quiet, washed pale by moonlight and the last lamps of the night watch. A donkey cart creaked somewhere distant. The harbor smelled of salt and old rope and secrets carried too long. Theron walked first, cloak drawn, plain, no rings on his fingers now. The merchant and impresario had shed his finery easily. Beneath it was a man who knew how to vanish into the commerce of the world. Scarus followed a pace behind, hood low, the weight of a short sword familiar at his side. He had left his armor behind. Loyalty did not always wear metal. I came last. I moved with unhurried precision, my steps soundless, my veil simple and unadorned. To a stranger, I might have appeared to be no more than a scholar's daughter traveling with family retainers. To those who knew me, few as they were, I was a woman who noticed what others missed. We reached the outer gate without speaking. Only once, when we were beyond the walls, on the road that followed the canal southward, did I break the silence. He is dead, I said. Theron glanced sideways. You speak of the prefect? Yes, I replied, and of the illusion that kept certain men polite. Scarus grunted. Illusions rarely survive water. I slowed slightly, falling into step beside him. Honourius did not tell us what he intended. No, Scarus said, but he trusted us to understand the consequences. Theron smiled faintly. That is his favorite cruelty. We traveled for many days. We traveled light, no banners, no formal escort. At each way station, Theron listened more than he spoke, buying wine, selling rumor, asking nothing directly. It was enough. They passed through here, he said, at a stop, fingering a scrap of cloth left behind by a camel driver. Not a caravan, as a disturbance. Camilla raised an eyebrow. You make it sound theological. Theron shrugged. People remember what unsettles their routine. Scarus knelt, touching the ground near the well. Northbound tracks, recent, heavy loads, but careful. I closed my eyes briefly. They are moving with purpose, I said, but not urgency. Theron looked at me. You sense them. I recognize the pattern, I replied. They gather the broken. They leave songs and questions in their wake. Scarus stood. Then we are not be the only ones who will follow. Several days later, we rested at midday beneath a stand of acacia, sharing bread and dates. Heat shimmered across the road. I broke a piece of bread carefully. You know why Honourius sent me? Theron did not look up. Because you will see her before we do. Scarus frowned. You believe that? I nodded. Sophia will feel me approaching. She always did. Theron studied me now. You know her well. I hesitated only a moment. I know what she was spared and what she was not. Scarus's gaze sharpened. You've been knowing more than you've been saying. Yes, I answered calmly, and no, I will not say it yet. Theron chuckled softly. Then you will fit in with the Starwalkers nicely. We traveled again at dusk, skirting villages, choosing paths traders used when they did not wish to be noticed. At a fork in the road, Scarus paused. This way leads towards the Red Sea road, he said. Camilla's breath caught slightly. They are not fleeing, she said. They are gathering. Scarus adjusted his pack. That be making 'em more dangerous. And more protected, Theron added. We chose the road east. As night fell, I spoke again, my voice low. If Turranius' death is discovered to be arranged, Rome will send someone worse. Scarus nodded grimly. Someone that be having less imagination. Theron smiled thinly, and more paperwork. I looked ahead, towards the darkening road. Sophia will not hide. No, Scarus agreed. She be walking straight into story. Theron stopped briefly, turning to them both. Then our task is simple. I raised an eyebrow. Simple rarely means easy. We find them first, Theron said. We deliver the message, and then we get out of the way. And if they refuse it, Scarus asked. Theron shrugged. Then Honourius' last act of protection becomes a warning instead of a shield. I tightened my cloak. Either way, the world will tilt. We walked on. Behind us, Alexandria receded into memory. Ahead of us, unseen but uncertain, you Starwalkers moved beneath the same sky, each step drawing the sands of fate, choice, and consequence closer together, and somewhere between the two paths, the silence left by a dead prefect began to echo. We reached the bad country by mid-morning. Beyond Gaza's last cultivated fields, the land hardened abruptly. Olive groves gave way to broken limestone and scrub, the road thinning into a pale ribbon etched between low rises. This was not wilderness. It was contested ground, where caravans passed only because there was no other way. Scarus slowed first. "This road be feedin' Jerusalem," he said. "Too many eyes." Theron smiled faintly, which means too many hands expecting payment. I drew my veil closer against the glare. "Who holds it?" Theron stopped walking. "No one officially," he said, which means everyone unofficially. We did not advance further. Instead, Theron stepped forward alone, hands open, his gait unhurried, like a man approaching a toll booth rather than an ambush. He bent, picked up a shard of chalky stone, and let it fall. "You can come out now," he said mildly. "If you wait much longer, the Romans will think I'm lost." Laughter answered him, low, dry, and practiced. Men emerged from the ridges and shallow wadis, Idumean spearmen, 2 Nabatean riders with wrapped bows, a scarred Judean with a Roman helmet worn as mockery. Their leader stepped forward, dark-eyed and watchful. "This road is closed," the man said. "Gaza's patience ends here." Theron inclined his head. "Temporarily, I hope." The man's gaze flickered past him to Scarus' stillness and my composure. "You are not pilgrims," one of the men said. "No," Theron agreed. "Pilgrims beg. We negotiate." The leader folded his arms. "With what?" Theron reached into his cloak slowly and produced a small leather pouch. He tossed it lightly. The leader caught it, waited, and opened it. Gold winked in the sun. "First," Theron said, "for interrupting your watch." The leader grunted but did not return the pouch. "Second," Theron continued, "for the wine you'll claim when you were denied tonight." A pause. "And third," Theron said, his voice lowering just enough to be noticed, "for what moves through Gaza tomorrow." The leader's eyes narrow. "What moves through Gaza tomorrow?" Theron smiled. "Nothing that wants to be remembered." Scarus shifted behind him once. The leader circled Theron slowly. "You speak as if you know this road." "I know roads that Rome pretends not to see," Theron replied, "and I know the men who survive it by choosing which names they never hear." The leader stopped in front of him. "You travel with a woman." I did not move. "Rome pays well for certain women," the man said. Theron's smile vanished. "Rome pays late," he said softly, "and when it does pay, it demands more than coin. You are not fools." The leader studied him, then said slowly, "You are Theron of Alexandria." Theron bowed slightly. "I see my reputation precedes me." "You make governors forget what they were asking," the leader said. Theron shrugged. "Only when they asked the wrong questions." Theron reached into his cloak again and produced a narrow strip of parchment, blank but sealed. "You let us pass," Theron said, "and tomorrow Gaza remembers nothing. No patrols asking for names, no scribes counting heads, no curiosity drifting inland." The leader frowned. "And if I refuse?" Theron shrugged. "Then Gaza becomes interesting." Silence. The leader weighed the pouch again, and then the seal, and then Theron's face. At last he laughed. "Merchants are worse than legionaries." Theron smiled faintly. "We have to be." The leader gestured sharply. "Pass. No fires, no lingering. By sunset, you're dust on the road." Theron bowed. Your discretion honors Gaza. As they passed, the leader called after him, If Rome asks, Theron did not turn. You saw pilgrims who argued theology and moved on. Once they had cleared the ridge and the coast fell behind them, Scarus released a breath. That road eats men. Theron resumed his easy stride. Only the ones who don't feed it first. I looked at him. You bought silence. Theron shook his head. No, I rented forgetfulness. Scarus glanced back once. They'll remember you. Theron smiled without humor. Good. Fear travels faster than messengers. We continued inland. The road narrowed again, bending toward Judea. Behind them, Gaza settled back into its layered loyalties. Roman on the surface, something older underneath. Ahead, unseen but certain, you Starwalkers moved on, unaware that your passage had just been negotiated in gold, reputation, and restraint. And here you are now, and here are we, and our tale is complete. Theron now stood in front of Sophia. Honourius wrote this for you, my lady. His last message to you is now delivered, and my commission is discharged. Music for Chapter 20. The Price of Silence. Words by Raymond Kaliope. Music by Marika AI. From ED Records, A New Quest, Sad Business, and Risen from the Ashes. The following from Epidemic Sound. Beyond Measure by Christopher Mo Ditlevson. Dark Shadows by Etienne Roussel. Wrath of Arius by Rachel Sandy. Progression by Christopher Mo Ditlevson. Our Final Mission by Christopher Mo Ditlevson. Back to the Wild by Pastis. Crypta by Joe Wandrini. Demon Night by Farrell Wooten. Losing Breath by Ludwig Moulin. ES669X by Lennon Hutton. Ancient Spells by Rewiki Zhao. Consumed by Darkness by Christopher Mo Ditlevson. Ethos by Johannes Borloff. Terra Requiem by Diane Shuai. Desert Footsteps by Sight of Wonders. Archangel Chronicles 2, Chapter 20, by Raymond Kaliope, all rights reserved.
In marble halls where torches gleam, where vows are bought and gods are named, I learned the cost of speaking truth in a world that feeds on flame. Rome buried daughters in the ground and called the darkness law. But one small breath escaped the grave and taught my heart to fall. I counted ships, I weighed the gold, I learned what men would trade, but love was never meant for accounts, nor truth that fades. So take my name, take my breath, let the river close my eyes. If silence keeps my daughter called it purity, called it faith, called fear a sacred thing. But fear is just a throne that cracks when children learn to sing. A prefect smiled and named this price with honey on his tongue. Give me her hand, give me her life, and I will call it done. Gold can buy the tongues of men, and power buys delay. But souls are not possessions you can give away. So take my name, take my breath, let the river close my eyes. If silence keeps my daughter free from Rome's unending lies, let history forget my face, let empires pass me by. If Sophia walks the world in light, then this is how I die. Oh Nile, you ancient witness, you remember what they hide. You have swallowed kings and tyrants and let the truth survive. I do not ask for mercy, I do not ask for grace, only that my child walks on beyond my erased name. No crown can own her thinking, no chain can hold her voice. She was born beyond their borders, beyond their brittle choice. If Rome must have its silence, let it take it from my chest. A father's love is heavier than iron gold. Oh, death, I know. Take my name, take my breath, let the river close my eyes. If silence keeps my daughter free from Rome's unending lies, let history forget my face, let empires pass me by. If Sophia walks the world in light, then this